size of the board, keep it a full-time job. You know, me personally, I almost would prefer to see the size of the board stay the same, but reduced to a part-time job by cutting the pay and benefits. And because I think you're going to get a larger group of people that are willing to run for these positions, and you're going to get a more diverse group of people with a wide range of background that can bring other areas of expertise. You have a lot of people that would love to get involved, but they don't want to do it or can't do it on a full-time basis, but on a part-time basis they would. So I think it would expand the pool of people that would run for the job. And so my personal preference would be same number, even a larger number, but a much smaller salary and a much smaller role to play in the government process.
My response to that would be, if it really were to happen, that the salary would be cut, that might be a good idea. But my experience in government is we don't cut much of anything. So because of that, I think realistic appraisal, I could see voting for anywhere. This will shock certain people, I know, particularly people at the courthouse. Anywhere between 5, not 9, 5 and 9 members. Get 5, 7, 9 people, get them trained, have them familiarized with government, have them, as they do in Los Angeles County, Tom Taylor and I talked about this, different board members are assigned to different areas. One would be responsible for real estate matters, one would be responsible for personnel matters. Supervisor Sanfilippo was the chairman of the personnel committee, and you develop expertise as a part of a management team almost to do that. And we want to make sure that we have minority representation. We have to encourage that and get the media behind that so that we had true diversity, so it was a genuine representation of our community. But a smaller group, an efficient group of people trying to function and better serve the public, I think would serve us far better than a larger group. I know some people said, let's make it even larger, let's give more and more people an opportunity. That might be true, but there are more opportunities, but is it going to run more efficiently? Is it going to be more cost effective? I think the smaller it is, the more diverse it is. If the people are properly trained and work as a team, that could be the solution for the future. And that's going to mean a lot of new faces in the courthouse. And to some of us, we think that could be a refreshing change.
Thanks.
I'd like to say something.
Sure.
You know, as we all know, if you want to kill something, just make a big committee, put a lot of people on it, and nothing's going to get done. You know, most of you know I'm a former president of Citizens for Responsible Government, and our position was always to make sure that the county board was run efficient. You know, we were instrumental in helping Scott Walker get elected, and some of the other people like Rice, members of our group. And the thing is, by the way, I'm the Hispanic, along with my associates, that somebody was speaking about helping with the question of the redistricting. But the thing is that I truly believe that the county board should be anywhere from 5 to 9 people. You know, I think that it's more effective. It's get us more ahead. A lot of things will get more accomplished. And the thing is, in the end result, everything ends up either in the state or the city. You know, we start off at the county, but there is support that goes through the state. If it's something related to the parks, it ends up back into the city. So I think that in that itself, if we have a smaller board that's always, you know, more that will operate more efficient and get things done better for the people.
I promise, my last question about county board size. And again, not to be too much of a devil's advocate, but one of the arguments against a smaller legislative body is the fact, number one, that to the extent that you have elected officials representing a greater number of people, there is a need for somebody running for such an office to raise more money. So that one of the supposed weaknesses in terms of shrinking the size, particularly to a level as low as 5 or 7 or even 9, would be that it would require more resources to actually win a county board race. So that's number one. Number two, it has often been argued that to the extent that we would shrink the county from 19 to say 5 districts, that it may be more difficult to guarantee appropriate minority representation. That with the bigger districts, it will be much more difficult to draw a map that would have a majority-minority district and or one that would properly, on a proportional basis, represent the minority population in our community. So again, I'd ask, do those elements concern any of you when we have this conversation about shrinking the county board, or are the reasons to shrink it that have been outlined, I think, very well, do those trump the reasons that I just outlined? Mr. Holden.
Clearly that question was tailor-made for me. We did, as an organization, vote to support a map that only has 18 seats. And let me try and justify that. Some of those arguments are a part of the reason. The first thing that I would say is, as Mr. Henkin is probably the biggest expert in the room and maybe the county on, the county's finances are in deep trouble. There's going to be a substantial number of changes over in the county over the next decade or so, one way or another. And we feel that it's critically important that everybody in the county is adequately represented and has an opportunity to play a role in deciding what's going to become of the county. And in order to do that, we do believe that people should have the ability to be represented by someone that's fairly close to them. We do feel that if there's only a few county board supervisors, let's say 5, of course those are going to be big money elections because the stakes are going to be really high. And folks in my community don't have a lot of money. And so we feel that that would be something that would be to our disadvantage. And so, of course, we have to endorse something that would have more county board supervisors than that. However, I do think that we need to differentiate between the size of the county board and the efficiency of the county board. But those two things are not identical, and the efficiency aspect of the county board has not really been in the public square very much. Everyone keeps talking about size. They don't talk about efficiency and some of the things that were discussed by our panelists a few minutes ago. Those deserve a full airing. Now, in terms of CRG, I was at one of the county board redistricting hearings where the current head of the local CRG was there. He actually endorsed a county board that had more members, but they were all part-time because he felt that that way the county board supervisors would be able to be very close to their constituents and would be able to hear their constituents, and yet he would still save money because they're at part-time status. So for all the people who just want to cut and slash, I would encourage you to look at other ways of increasing efficiency rather than just simply slashing the size of the board.
Anyone else want to respond to that? Okay, let's move off of county board size, and I'd like to ask a few questions regarding process, and then try to hone in on really why does this matter, and then we'll turn it over to you, the audience, for your questions. So, virtually all of you have had some critique of the process used by the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors under this current redistricting process. I was wondering if any of you would care to articulate what, in your mind, an ideal county board redistricting process would have and should have looked like.
Community meetings.
If you want to, I'll be happy to start.
Okay, Mr. Heike, Mr. Holden.
Mayor Tom Barrett, this will be an unusual answer. Mayor of the City of Milwaukee, Intergovernmental Cooperation Council, which he's a member, recommended that Mayor Tom Barrett, the mayor of Milwaukee, at one of the last meetings of the ICC, recommended that there be a redistricting commission with no elected officials on it that would decide the redistricting. And of course, when when the partisan race is at the state level, the party that is in control never wants to carry that. And it's the same thing is true in Congress and so on. But this is local government. This is not partisan. This is something that we should be able to come up with a vehicle where this doesn't happen again. And that commission could have Hispanics on it, African Americans on it, the different municipal people that have background and understand the importance of local government units continuing to work together and approach it that way. And this is something that could have been avoided. So we left the people guarding the hen house that had a lot of their own personal interests in it. And there was a vindictive piece in it too. And you know it was directed at Supervisor Rice. It's kind of an embarrassment to county government that 12 members of the county board would vote for a vindictive plan like that. I can tell you, and I think Supervisor Sanfilippo was not one of them, but I can tell you, when I was in office, we never would have done that. I don't care how many disagreements we have with someone, as soon as we get to the point where we say, we have the power and we're going to get rid of the person we don't agree with, what type of a democracy is that? So the process has been abused. The process has been abused. The people that abused it, it needs to be taken away from them. I'll give you an example in point. Some of you may not think it's that important, but Supervisor Rice was the chairman of the Ethics Study Committee. I happen to have been a member of that committee. And it was something where, over the years, the county executive appointed the people to the County Ethics Study Committee. And those of you who are county officials, county representatives, Mr. Boltman, others here, Harold, my task as one of the 6 members of the committee was to contact County Executive Scott Walker and explain to him, this isn't a good thing for Milwaukee County for you to be appointing these people on the Ethics Study Committee. So when the final plan was written up, the 6 members of the committee are no longer appointed by the county executive. And he agreed to that. And it takes people like us, citizens, to go to these public officials and explain to them how they can better serve the public and avoid these enormous conflicts of interest that are facing them. That piece of Whitefish Bay, southwest corner, I mean, I grew up here. That's one of the reasons I'm here. That's connected with a little finger thread down to the city of Milwaukee. It's an outrageous insult to Whitefish Bay. People have abused this. The way to solve it, Mr. Henkin, is to have an independent commission. And we've got someone like, with the stature of Mayor Barrett proposing that. I think we ought to go to the Republicans that say the same thing to them. And we probably should do it in between redistricting. 2010's the census, 2015. Let's do it when no one knows who's going to be in control. That's what I would do.
Well, I mean, after what he's saying there is, I agree, but it should be open more to the public where there's a lot more participation. Right now, that's what's happening is that we're getting a small body of people making these decisions for everyone, you know, and bottom line is that we're trying to find out where do we go from here when we're not being told what's happening, you know, and I think that that's a prime example of what happened, and that's why we're here today. The county chose to make its own decision, didn't get involved, and move forward. And I think that that's what we need to do. If we already know that this is something that happens every 10 years, you know, the year before we should already be discussing what's going to happen, where we're going to take it. We're not even doing that. You know, we're waiting until the 11th hour to make decisions, and then we're upset because a group of people went into a private room and made a decision for all of us.
Mr. Holtman?
Sure. Well, I'm sorry that touching the city of Milwaukee is an insult to Whitefish Bay. I live in the city of Milwaukee, and I think we're pretty happy when we touch Whitefish Bay. It's not an insult to us, but that's neither here nor there. In terms of the ideal process, of course, the ideal process is not going to involve the politicians whose districts we're talking about. It is going to be some sort of commission process. Now, if we wanted this to happen in reality, and I suspect that this sort of conversation happens every 10 years around this time when people figure out how cynical this process is, immediately, as soon as this is done, people need to stand up and change the process right away while it's still fresh in our minds, because otherwise we're going to forget about it. And sooner or later, it's going to be 10 years later, we'll be having the same conversation again. So if you want a better process, it needs to get changed ASAP while people are still thinking about it. If politicians are going to be involved, I would tell you to look no further than to the city of Milwaukee. Their redistricting process thus far has been transparent. They have had a substantial amount of information on redistricting on their website, all the maps and access to all those things that the county was hesitant to give out. That's been on the city's website from the get-go. From the beginning, they said what the process was going to be. They laid it out for everybody. They gave people an opportunity to use city resources to print their own maps. We attempted to do that with the county, who told us to go to the state, who told us to go back to the county. So we had to go elsewhere to make our maps. And then finally, the city came out with the map, and they said, we're gonna wait 3 weeks before having any vote on it, rather than the 6 days that the county voted. That